Oh, hey.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
here. You're alive. Look at you. I love it. You know,
young, young,
where you
young
been?
man. Yeah, young man, is your father there? I was expecting to talk to your father.
Yeah, yeah. Woo. Look at that. Look at that.
You look fantastic, John.
Oh, you're very kind. You're very kind. As you know, I was auditioning for a part in a liturgical drama, but the casting director decided they were going to go in a different direction. So
Ah,
I didn't get the part. But this is a good sign because as I look out in the shed here at my studio, I wish I could turn this camera around. You can see all of that. We are gearing up, and that's really the part of the shaving thing, because I was told that nobody trusts a man with a beard. And I thought that was really kind of funny, given the look of the Messiah. But the I was told that evangelicals have it as a truism that a man with a beard and a mustache is hiding something behind that. He's got a secret that he's keeping from others. To which a Texas evangelical friend of mine said, and what they don't want to admit, John, is that everybody has a secret that they're hiding. and that the beard people are honest in reminding you of that fact. But anyway, all right. As
gee,
opposed
whiz,
to all the women that have secrets. But
gee whiz, John. What are we going to talk about today?
no, we're going to talk about the letter G. The letter G.
Okay, you, folks,
Gorilla,
folks, you're
green jackets.
you're joining us on our very first Sesame Street episode, brought to you by the letter G.
Wow. Yeah. You are just filled with great lines today, Nick. This is great. I should give you like a month off all the time. This is great. No, I have been working on this post about the letter G, I think for the better part of a year. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, we're coming right up on a year's time. But I got a big push when I found an essay by a perennialist. You know, some people, the perennialist, Renee Guénon, about the letter G. I thought, okay, now I've got an excuse to do a real deep dive into this. It's not just my crazy obsession with this repeated letter. But really, I've already put up 2 posts. If you're watching this, I put up 2 posts about the symbolism of the letter G in Hallmarked Man. And the reason I want to talk about this now, as we're getting ready for these classes, Nick, that we're giving, is that when people talk about Rowling's work, if there's one word they want to get, it's coloration. And that's not something that people talk about that much, Nick. When you were going through your comprehensive, did they talk about coloration?
Not at all. And I'm thinking back through our mammoth Canrecki, and that's not in one of the tools that we talked about at all, even though it was really in every tool we were talking about.
That's right. Right. And so before we get into the letter G, let me talk about coloration, right? Coloration, I did this in both my posts, right? It's a term used to describe background information in the text that lights or shades the foreground material in such a way that the reader's experience of the narrative is moved in a particular direction subliminally, under the threshold, beneath your consciousness. Okay. Coloration is not exclusively about colors, though that can play a part, as in the alchemical sequence symbolism, right? It's at least as much about the prevalent symbols and types that create contact, if you will, between the immaterial reference, the greater realities which the symbols represent, and the reader's imagination, bringing those 2 things together. Some examples of that, I've mentioned C.S. Lewis uses that with his planetary imagery, which is not planets, right? It's traditional symbols associated with that planet in the Western tradition. He rolls that in every one of his Narnia novels. Michael Ward lays this out in his brilliant Planet Narnia. We see it in Charles Williams's Tarot books. We see it in Nabokov's Potostorino, Spirituality. We see it in Dickensian cryptonyms. We see it in the Psychomachia of Shakespeare, Dostoevsky, and Tolkien, right? And Rowling has all those in her models. She's not inventing coloration. But, okay, here's what separates serious readers of Rowling-Galbraith from the million-member army of her global audience. Those readers get that all of her shed artistry, her intentional reworking via specific craft choices of her lake inspiration into archetypal story and transformative imaginative experience, depends on subliminal coloration. Right? That's what we do here. Yeah. I understand if you're out there in the audience and you're saying, oh, okay, here goes John, on one of his hyperbole rants. Okay. And if you think of all of it is repugnant because it's just overboard. But a brief look at Rowling's signature shed tools makes that claim pretty much indisputable, right? And here's the top 7 that we talk about here all the time. Literary alchemy, ring composition and parallelism, mythological templates, cretillic names, psychomachian allegory, the soul and its transformation, cathartic shock, and traditional symbolism. Every one of those things works on a reader by escaping his or her conscious mind's direct detection and the operative element's penetration of his or her unconscious mind via the potency of the working symbolism or archetype and its repetition. Nobody, Nick, grasps on a first reading Rowling-Galbraith stories, alchemical sequences and symbols, the chiastic echoing and meanings in the middle centers, the backdrop mythology, the character markers hidden in the names, the soul transformation allegory, the otherworldly reference experienced in repeated symbolic notes, or the misdirection setting up the big twist finish. I mean, few people really, if we're going to be honest, understand it even after it's pointed out. But if you're a subscriber here, yeah, you're part of it. You're part of the good guys. You're the exceptional crowd. Take a bow, right? But all of them, in other words, all these tools require the reader to not detect Rowling's artistry at the surface level. All the shed tools deliver content that need to enter the reader's unconscious mind via repeated subliminal imaginative experiences. All right. And again, she didn't invent that. Almost all the writers that she loves, they do 1 or 2 of these things, maybe 3 or 4 of those things. But she does them all. She does them all. Okay. Now, this is something, C.S. Lewis said once that he wrote a thing called The Literary Impact of the Authorized Version, which he had a bizarre relationship with, the Authorized Version, King James Bible. He said, an influence which cannot evade our consciousness will not go very deep. In effect, it won't have a lasting or profound effect. And Mark Twain said something the same way. He said, if you want to teach your reader anything in your fiction, it has to be done not overtly, not in their face, not so they can figure out what you're doing, which instructions they will resist instinctively into their last breath. But you can only instruct them covertly, implicitly, rather than an explicit heavy-handedness. Now, that's what Rowling is about. And, it's examples of this.
Well, I hate to put myself forward as the poster boy for an unconscious reader, but there are lots of themes in Hallmarked Man that I just did not get. Actually, honestly, until I started working with you and Ed and Sandy on the close reading ready for trying to chart the ring structure. So we have eyes, we have crosses. Completely escaped my notice until we started underlining words and highlighting reflections at different points in the book. But you've focused on all the G's in Strike 8. What made you focus on that rather than the other themes that we've identified?
Well, I guess it's just, well, first, I true confessions. I didn't think that much of it until I was looking at a book. Where is it? It's on my I got so many books stacked up here, Nick. It's crazy. I was looking in this book. It's by René Guénon. He's probably the most famous perennialist writer of the 20th century. And this is the book that was put together of his writings that were scattered all over publications in Europe and in the Crescent. And I found an essay in it called The Letter G and the Swastika. I thought, wow, Guénon thinks the letter G is a symbol. I thought it was an initial. And that was the first time that I thought of the letter G as anything other than something. And then it's Nick, when I give talks, and it's been a long time since I've been on the road, largely because, as a Orthodox Christian that thinks that transgenderism is one of the great delusions of our age and a tragedy on multiple levels. I've been blacklisted from speaking at universities and even in many churches and stuff. So I haven't given talks like that. I just give talks all the time. But one of the great thing about giving talks to audiences of serious readers that love Rowling and her work is that aha moment. When you're sharing something and they all of a sudden this light comes on. When their unconscious experience of Rowling's repeated symbols are forced to the surface, either for the first time or with greater clarity than they've ever had, even after repeated readings. And when I talk about to Harry Potter fans, I talk about how at the end of every book, Rowling inserts a symbol of Christ at Harry Potter's sacrificial love, death, and resurrection scenes. They all, this big light comes on, and it's really wonderful to see it because you share it when you having that aha moment. And then when I talk about the 7 eyeballs floating around Deathly Hallows, people don't, they're astonished because they read the book and they missed all of the eyeballs floating. They obviously remember each one of them when you point it out, but they don't see what that means. And they certainly didn't make much of Harry burying Mad-Eye Moody's eyeball, beneath a giant tree, the Axis Mundi tree in the Forest of Dean, and putting a cross on it, and how that just covers everything. It's one of the great symbolic passages in contemporary English literature. But that aha moment with the eyeballs is great. And then there's Troubled Blood. Troubled Blood, you mentioned crosses, Nick, because there's a lot of crosses in Hallmarked Man too. But Troubled Blood, man. You've got the Celtic cross tarot card spread. You've got the Maltese cross of St. John, which appeared, oh, look, it's in the pavement. Oh, look, it's over here underneath the gazebo. Oh, it's just, oh, there's another one. You got the St. Piran tattoo on Polwarth, the cross. You've got the astrological charts that are all, of course, on a cross. But really, to me, the most subtle one is the embedded Psychomachian allegory of Strike as the Red Cross Knight, straight out of the Fairy Queen. There's crosses everywhere in that book. Did you get that on your first read, Nick? When you talk to Strike fans about that kind of thing, they're kind of like, well, yeah, I remember that. But they don't understand that that's really the power of the story, and that Strike's transformation as the Red Cross Knight is really about his death and resurrection. which is another cruciform image, right? That, when you get to the Hallmarked Man and you're looking for what symbols do we see repeated that are really in your face, the first one that comes up, Nick, is frankly the letter G of all things. Now,
let's see if we can list those. Now, let's take turns then. So I think the first time I think we see the Masonic G. So this is the initial on its own between the set square and the compass as one of the core Masonic symbols. What that stands for? Well, there are stories. So it could be the initial letter of God. It could be the initial letter of geometry, or both. But for sure, it's an important symbol in Masonry.
Okay. Now, all of that, Nick, oddly enough, isn't really in Hallmarked Man.
No.
Okay, when we're talking about what the letter G means in the Hallmarked Man, Rowling is really careful on how she rolls this out. We get Robin, who's excited about the case. She doesn't know that Strike is only taking this case because he's in pursuit of her. But we're on the case, and she decides to do her media survey to see what people are saying about the death of William Wright. And the first time we see the letter G is in a listing of what people are saying about Masonry and the murder in the Ramsey Silver Ball. And the one that she really, even though there's a whole bunch of them, I mean, there's like 6 of them, she chooses the one that she focuses on is, someone wrote, I've heard the letter G was carved into Wright's back. Obvious reference to the only surviving letter of Hiram's secret word, Hiram and Beef, right? Now she really grabs onto that because we know that's of all the ones that we talk about. She brings that one up when she and Murphy sit down and Strike sit down to talk about because Murphy, the character Murphy, is trying to dissuade them from taking the case because they don't want to screw up the investigation into another crime, right? So it's all got to be kept undercover, and he doesn't want heavy-footed Strike, going into this. And right near the end of that briefing, Robin asks him, this might be an odd question. There we go. There's the hallmark, right? There's a pay attention. But was anything carved into the victim's back? And Murphy goes off. How the fuck do you know about that? How the fuck do you know about that? Right? And this is pretty bizarre. I mean, the text says that Robin was nettled by his tone, especially in front of Strike. Well, having your boyfriend curse you out in front of your business partner. Yeah. She said, I saw it online. That previous reference, someone commenting on the story said he had the letter G carved into him. Murphy says, closing his notebook, all these things are things like pay attention. My contact told me it was a hallmark, and that's all I've got. Okay, so this is, again, our first references to the letter G are just in a collection of online, seemingly arbitrary guesses by, the internet community. And one of them says they carved a G into his back. Robin takes that thing of all things and brings up the letter G again. Murphy denies it and says it was a hallmark. Now, at that point, we don't really know hallmarks. But we eventually learn, Nick, that the hallmark is the Salem cross. Salem,
Yeah.
not for Massachusetts, but for Jerusalem. But there's a Jerusalem cross, which is different. So, this is the Salem cross. And that Salem cross is not of Rowling's invention. The Salem cross actually is something used by both the Pope and the Masons. But what Rowling does do is invent a Murdoch, a seafarer. I think the name Murdoch, Nick, it's from the Gaelic for sea warrior or something. It's very much like Murphy. But it has, that MURD it reminds me of Moaning Myrtle, and that Rowling likes to play with anything that is assonant with the French word for shit. That there's the merde thing here, I think is probably relevant, is in play. The way that Moaning Myrtle is always in the toilet. Anyway, that she invents Murdoch, and she invents that this is a hallmark, because hallmarks are pretty exclusive to regions and to qualities of the silver being imprinted with the hallmark. And so she invents this hallmark, and then uses it as the murderer's brand on the back of Tyler Powell. Quite literally crucifying him. That crucify means being made into a cross. That's what happens to him. He becomes really, an icon of the cross. That's the first contact we have with this, Nick, is through that G and a hallmark association with the cross. So that's really not Masonic per se. The lady the person on the internet who wrote this said that the G was associated with the lost word of Hiram of beef. And that's going to come back into play. Yeah. But it doesn't really mention the G being in the set square and stuff. It just says, hey, G's are important. She brings it up again, and we get the association with that Salem cross. So in a book titled The Hallmarked Man, it's fair to note that Rowling has given the letter G significant weight without obviously foregrounding it. I don't think any of us were like, oh yeah, the letter G, the letter G at that point. All right, it's your turn, Nick. What happens next? This is the best scene, I think, because it's just so weird the way it comes. I hope it's what you're gonna. I'm anticipating what you're going to say, but I really hope you say. Go ahead.
So, okay. Gautu.
Oh, you didn't go where I wanted to. Go ahead. Go ahead. Gautu. Go to Gautu.
Gautu. So we first hear of this said rather than spelt out. So it's what is Gautu? And it's explained. Actually, it's an acronym, GAOTU, which stands for the Great Architect of the Universe, which is another name for God. So God by another name, used in Freemasonry.
And we get that scene. I mean, in case you didn't think that was really Masonic enough, we get that explanation in Freemason Hall.
Yes.
From Hiram Hardacre, we get from our beloved, really the only Mason that comes off good inside the books.
Because he likes a good dinner.
Hardacre. That's right. He's there because it's a fraternity that has meal service. This is great. And really Hardacre, you feel strikes affection from him. And one of Rowling's great gifts is that she communicates so clearly how much the character that we really identify with feels about the person they're interviewing, and we take on that, relationship with that character. And you can't hate Hardacre.
No.
He's just, if Hardacre winds up being the person who killed Lita Strike, you will all be astonished, Nick. But put that marker down, Nick, in case that happens. You say, "Oh, John predicted Hardacre did that." Now, what I was hoping you were going to, and so there we get a big, Mason G, Gao 2. It's not explicitly G though, right? It's Gao 2. But yeah, pretty heavy there with the Gao 2. All right. To me, the next big thing after Robin, has her encounter with Strike and Murphy is the attack in Harrow's, where she's supposed to be meeting with Albie Simpson White. She's made a date with him. He's working there at Harrods, excuse me. I'm not supposed to know UK department stores. Okay, give me a break. All right. Anyway, what is Harrods? Anyway,
Harrods is a private school, very exclusive.
Great. So she wasn't shopping there. Is what you're saying to me, Nick? It wasn't shopping. Okay, great. Woo! Yeah, it's a big ocean, Nick. It's a really big ocean. All right. So anyway, Robin's shopping at the exclusive Harrods at Christmas time, where she's in a mob, and she's choked from behind. She's threatened, and incredibly, she's gifted with a rubber model of a gorilla. Here's your gorilla, Robin. And she doesn't know what to make of that at first. She goes into shock, as you'd expect. The person runs away through the crowd. She has no chance of catching them. And then she has this, what I think is a weird reaction. Okay, she says to herself, the rapist who had ended her university career and ruined her fallopian tubes had worn a rubber gorilla mask to attack her and 6 other girls, 2 of whom had died from strangulation. He'd been sentenced to life and was still in jail. All applications for parole refused. Robin's identity had been hidden from the press when she had given evidence in court, age 19. Now she's 30 now, right, Nick?
Yeah.
And she says to herself, how could a stranger know she'd been witness G? And there we get a big G here. Yeah. Robin is witness G. Now that seems a natural response. Robin's testimony was protected from public view by the assignment of a letter. Presumably she was the 7th witness testifying anonymously, whence the assignment of the letter G, the 7th letter in the English alphabet. Now, the Latin alphabet. That Rowling chose that letter, however, and has Robin recall it as she does, rather than have the more generic response, how could anyone know that I testified against the gorilla masked rapist? I testified behind protections to my identity. This is intentional artistry rather than arbitrary assignment. Rowling-Galbraith is giving us the letter G there for witness G. We've already encountered the letter G in association with the principal murder, the Masonic murder narrative, and the legend of Hiram Abief, which is queued up as the initial of the secret word that Murphy links to the 3-barred cross hallmark. Now, via the witness G association, the link is made between the 7th letter and Robin's defining life trauma in a life beset with assaults and injuries. Okay, now we're getting all sorts of stuff going on. We got the G is now linked to her vocation as an avenger, because when she was witness G, that was her first success in putting away a terribly dangerous criminal. Okay, and then we get its ties to the gorilla mask rapist, whose crime caused her to be effectively sterile, which is a big part of this book, right? And then we get the association with the green-jacketed thug who gave her the rubber gorilla and Harrods, and who haunts and attacks her repeatedly in Strike 8. So this becomes, Nick, an emotional and psychological trigger for the reader, in addition to what Robin and Strike are experiencing, pretty much a mirror image of that. We have the fear of G now, as well as the mystery of G and Hiram's word and whatever. So, okay, that's my G spot. Back. Bounce this back to you. Where do we next encounter the letter G?
So ramping up both the mystery and the tension, we have the letter G daubed on the agency door in red, no less. And we don't know, Strike doesn't know, is it referring to Robin as witness G? Is it referring to that Masonic G? And I think ramping up the sense of eerie danger when Strike tries to remove it from the door. He wants to get rid of it before Robin can see it. He's left with this red, this bloody smear across the agency door.
Yeah, I mean this. Here those 2 points meet, right? We get witness G and the Masonic G meet when Strike doesn't know what this means. Now, well, first of all, in that passage, he says specifically, was he supposed to take this G to symbolize the letter emblazoned in the middle of the square and compasses of Freemasonry's most identifiable sign? That's the first time that's said in the book.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, we're supposed to have understood that somehow, but there we get it put right up front. G is a Masonic thing. Or was this a message for Robin, who'd been witness G in the trial? That, and it winding up a large red smear. Now, Nick, I don't know how, being a good progressive atheist, you're a friend. I'm not going to call you what you really are, Nick. But anyway, not in public. I'll say that for our public, our private, back and forth. But I don't know how you grew up. Did you read Bible stories when you were a kid? I mean, did you get?
Yeah. So
did that red letter thing make you go, whoa?
Yes. Yeah. So that maybe tickled an old memory from Sunday school of the Israelites in Egypt. I think that certainly landed with me.
Okay, that's great. Because Strike doesn't make anything of that.
No.
I mean, this is archetypal terrorism. For a Westerner, a red letter, on the door, red paint on the door is going to be like sacrificial blood put on the lintels of a doorway to keep the angel of death from taking your firstborn. That's Exodus 12. I mean, this is a big thing. This is God's explicit command that he is sending down a punishment on the Egyptians. And the only thing that's going to keep the angel of death from taking your kids is if you dab blood on your doorway. And here's this big letter G, which, as you say, the Gao 2 bit is, from God. And now someone's put this up there. So, no matter how you take it, if it's the Masons doing it, or it's somebody after Robin because of the witness G thing, trying to terrorize her, it's a terrifying thing. And Strike's response tells us it's a terrifying thing, because what does he choose to do, Nick?
Right, he tries to scrub it out, and when that isn't effective, he notes he's going to have to paint that door before the landlord sees it.
Right, correct. But what does he do with Robin about that big red G?
He doesn't mention it, does he?
No. He says he didn't want to drag up her rape again, right? Because all this is in calculation to win her affection. I don't want to drag the rape up. Was this perhaps an obvious case of least said, soonest mended? Yeah, that's where I'm going to go. But of course, when the green jacketed man drops the Masonic dagger in front of Robin and threatens her again, Strike is furious, which means that Strike is scared. He really loves Robin, and and we all We all love Robin too, even though she's a fictional character. And Rowling-Galbraith is setting us up here. We get to see Strike do his alarmed, masculine, protective thing, and Robin is doing her, don't put me in a box, don't protect me. This is not that big of a deal. When he reports this, it was a well-lit residential street, and he didn't actually hurt, And then Strike breaks in. This is the time, Nick, he decides. Yes. You realize there was a fucking G painted on the street door on New Year's Eve. Now that sends Robin around the twist, right? What? Yeah. I didn't. Why didn't you tell? And this bloke said, stop. Why didn't you tell me a G was painted on the door? Now we get that in italics, this is Robin now is furious. And Nick, this is when Strike says the thing he didn't want to say.
The power of words fail him.
I don't know.
The weak link.
Oh, now, granted, he didn't really say you're the weak link. He said somebody's clearly decided you're the weak link.
Yeah.
But Robin takes that as all of her insecurities come right up, and goodbye, all progress made in winning Robin's affections. Again, Rowling has set all of this up. Of course she takes offense. It's offensive. But now, Nick, the letter G is tied into the subject of Strike's pursuit of Robin and the roller coaster ride of that relationship in Hallmarked Man. Okay, it becomes one of the. Remember when Robin goes through her grocery store litany, her list of anxieties to review periodically. She mentions the G on the door. It's like it's one more thing. I think we've established that G is imprinted in the reader's subconscious mind as a hallmark, if you will, for everything meaningful in the book, right? We get the whole Mason backdrop. We get Robin's history, the rapist, her infertility, consequent to the ectopic pregnancy. We get her fear of the green-jacketed man and the gorilla. And we get the Strike-Robin relationship. Because it becomes a turning point, really, that G on the door becomes, the means to the explosion of their relationship mid-book. So it's a big deal. The letter G is not John's little fetish. All right.
But G also is important in Freemasonry, which I'm guessing most of us didn't realize. Now, whether that's because much more than 50% of Galbraith's readership are female and therefore ineligible to become Freemasons.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, historically, there are female, Mason societies.
I think that they would be not in cordial communion with the Grand Lodges, so they would be irregular.
Probably an American irregularity, but all right.
Yeah. But G is important, and as somebody who probably has the finest Masonic library in South Carolina, John,
actually, the Masons are pretty big here, Nick. So
okay,
that is not a safe bet. Probably the only non-Mason with a collection of these Masonic books. Yeah, I don't know if you can see them here off to the side, but I had to bring them all down to look up G and what they said it was about. And I went through this before. Yeah. One of our first talks, we talked about Masonry, and I went through the books and tried to make something of it. But I missed the whole G thing. Probably because I didn't look at the pictures closely enough. Because it's really in emblems that you see that G just jump out at you. And I put some of these in that first post. There's a wonderful, it's on the bottom of my stack. I'm not pulling that book out. There's a wonderful book by Jeremy. Let me look around here and see if I can find it. Jeremy Harwood. gosh, is that guy's name always pronounced Hardwood? That poor guy, Harwood. He wrote a book called The Freemasons. It's a coffee table picture book. And sure enough, you find these big posters, especially from the 19th and early 20th century, where the G is, it's right there. It's in your face. And then there's my favorite one that I included in the post is the picture of George Washington with the G in the blaze of glory over the chair on an ambo, a raised platform. And it turns out that's where the G is in most lodges. I found in the Complete Idiot's Guide to Freemasonry, which turns out to be one of the most useful books in learning what I wanted to know about Freemasonry. That the middle chamber of King Solomon's temple was used as a meeting place of the craftsmen during the construction of the temple. It's depicted with a blazing letter G suspended over the worshipful master, symbolizing geometry and God. Right? So all American lodge rooms have a large G over the master's station in the east of the lodge. It is illuminated when the worshipful master declares the lodge opened and is turned off as soon as he declares it closed. Right? And there are wonderful things. I found some pictures of lanterns that pressed tin things that have big G's in them. They would hang out to show you the lodge is open. And this is a big deal. And again, you can read the first post. I found a wonderful book about American, the influence of Masonry on American politics and culture. And it's called That Religion in Which All Agree, Freemasonry in American Culture, by David Hackett. And in it, I put a pretty long passage about how we move from Masonry as a medieval craft guild to a speculative fraternity where they serve meals. And that explained, what the Mason word was and why the G, the initiatory ceremonies in the medieval guild rite are going to be talking about the letter G because of medieval focus on God. They're building cathedrals, Nick, and geometry because that's how God works, and that's what makes that particular guild what it is. That they're going to learn certain crafts as Masons. That that big G is a good thing because of geometry and God. Now, Hackett doesn't talk though about the G not really being operative in non-German or non-English cultures, as a symbol for God. Anyway,
in Welsh, I guess it would be a D, and I don't know what the Welsh for geometry is.
Yeah, in French it's going to be D. In Latin it's going to be D. So it's and that's a problem, Nick, because remember that Masonry likes to have affectations of going back into the dawn of history.
Yeah.
That it's primordial, perennial. Its truths are not contemporary as such, but are tied to everything transcendent. And the G is a marker that no, this is really about England and Scotland, and it's being transferred to the United States. But that being what it is, and I put some things in there. There's wonderful stuff available online that really knocks down what the Masons believe about the letter G being for the grand architect or for God, and how that relates with geometry.
Okay.
Um,
So in part one, you've sort of laid out the symbolism as it is, and I was expecting in part two that you were going to really focus in on this idea of God and geometry in Hallmarked Man, and instead you say that the G doesn't really work.
yeah, I mean, yeah, this was a challenge, Nick.
Yeah,
Because as I said at the end of the first one, there's all sorts of problems with um, the letter G as a symbol. You know, it's it's not a symbol. It's an initial, right? There's
yeah,
nothing inherently ancient or esoteric about it. It's not tied to anything to do with craft masonry. It doesn't even look right among other Masonic symbols. It's not angular or symmetrical. It's just kind of a weird letter, right? And it doesn't explain the mysterious Masonic catechism explanation of the letter's meaning. Now that's where it gets really important, is that in Masonic rite, one of the oldest part of the rites is where the respondent and the examiner, the respondent is the initiate wannabe. And he has to have a back and forth with the examiner to show that he's learned the things that he needs to do to participate in the rite and to be initiated to that degree and receive, what do they call them? The jewels?
yes, yeah. The degree of fellow craft.
Okay. And one of these, one of the oldest ones, which is to say probably, at best the early 18th century, the examiner says, "My friend, if you pretend to be of this fraternity, you can forthwith and rightly tell what means the letter G." Now, the respondent goes back and forth here, whatever, but he eventually says, this is his answer, which is accepted and he's able to pass on, is by letters 4 and science 5, this G aright doth stand. In due art and proportion, you have your answer, friend. Now, clearly, that's not very clear, right, Nick? I mean, that's,
No.
What he's supposed to describe what a letter means. And he says, by letters 4 and science 5. Now, I spent most of part 2, I shouldn't say most, but much of part 2 trying to get, I collected how people explained that.
Yeah.
Now, some of it was just silly. I guess that's unkind, isn't it? But when you say the letters 4, this one 1927 exegete says that the letters 4 properly refers to JHVH, the tetragrammaton or 4-letter word, the Hebrew designation of deity. Okay, and he says science 5 is geometry. Now that's uniform. Science 5 everybody gets, because geometry is the 5th of the traditional 7 liberal arts. So science 5, hooray! We get that. The G is for that. But the 4 letters, and it breaks down, Nick, into this fight over whether the G is actually the letter or not. I think the more sophisticated, or just the more attentive people trying to explain what the letter G means say it's not a letter G. It's a gamma. It's a capital gamma, which Nick resembles what?
So that's a square. That's a Masonic square.
So that would work. You could also say, and really the best interpretations I found of this say that it's a Hebrew yud. Now, Nick, you look at a G, and you look at a gamma, and you look at a yod, and the G, it's one thing if G is an initial, a 1-letter acronym for God and geometry. Okay, as an English speaker, That's great. But when you're going to say, you're going to back off that now and say the G isn't even a symbol of those things or an acronym for those things. It's really a symbol of the Yod or the Gamma, which don't have those reference or have those reference to things that, the Yod is the first letter of the Tetragrammaton, okay, which, the name of God, which is unspoken. Usually you say Adonai, the Lord, if you were reading Hebrew text, instead of trying to say Jehovah as we do in English. Those things serve as spoken placeholders for the unspeakable, transcendent God. But this crazy stuff people do, and I included some of it. Where one guy said, "Look, if you do the Greek letters for God, Gamma, Omicron, and Delta, and you mash them together, you get a G."
But I'm guessing, yeah. I'm guessing God is not the Greek for God.
Nick, as always, you're spot on. Seriously, Theos, Hotheos for the God, and Theos for divinity. That doesn't give you that, Nick. Anyway, no. So this you get, and then the Yod. If you look at a Yod, Nick, I think I said in the post, if you stand on your head, and you squint a lot, maybe you can see a G in that, but I think you probably, you're going to get tested for using illicit substances if you do. That's just, there's something wrong there. Now, so where are we going with all that? it just seems really unsatisfying.
Yeah.
Tam spells, Tamara to her friends, when I put this post up, immediately said, "John, what about Albert Pike and his morals and dogma?" Well, I will pick this one up. I did not include that in my first draft of the second post because I couldn't find anything in this mammoth book about the letter G.
How many times have you read it?
I have not read the book, Nick. I'm sorry if I've misled anybody to think that I've, spent that much time with this. But Tamara has a searchable copy. Oh, wow. Is that sweet? And so she found it right away and gave me enough clues that I was able to find it. It's on page 15. If I had just read the first 20 pages, Nick, I would have found it. Anyway, let me make the noise here as I drop this. That's a big book. Now, Pike, he gets all obscure. It's so funny. But he says that's properly the Yod, not the G. He writes, in the east of the lodge over the master, enclosed in a triangle, is the Hebrew letter Yod. In English and American lodges, the letter G is substituted for this as the initial of the word God, with as little reason as if the letter D, initial of Dio, were used in French lodges instead of the proper letter. So Pike, as an American, a Confederate general of all things, really, Nick, doesn't think this is the right thing to do.
Okay.
To have that D in there at all. Now he goes through all sorts of, arcane stuff about, where you can get, Kabbalistic triads information, but he says it must suffice to say that it is the creative energy of the deity is represented as a point, and that point in the center of the circle of immensity. I'm telling you, I'm not making this up. It is to us in this degree the symbol of the unmanifested deity, the absolute, who has no name. But then he goes on to talk about how, the French thing, and it's much like the picture of George Washington with the blazing glory behind it. He says that our ancient English brethren talk about how, with the French, the French have the letter Yod in the center of the blazing star. The blazing star, or glory, according to the Old English accounts, in the center refers us to that grand luminary, the sun, which enlightened the earth, and by its genial influence dispenses blessings to mankind. Now, Pike makes that into, this is an emblem of omniscience, the blazing star, and the all-seeing eye, which to the Egyptian initiates was the emblem of Osiris, the creator. Now, this actually gets interesting because he says, with the Yod in the center, the blazing star or glory has the Kabbalistic meaning of the divine energy manifested as light creating the universe. Now, Nick, we finally arrived at a Christian meaning because, frankly, Pike is, as an American in the mid to late 19th century, he knows that the creative principle of Christianity, the Logos, through whom the transcendent Father brings all things visible and invisible into existence, is known as the light of the world as well as the light in every man. So he's seemingly pointing there, though he wraps it in Egyptian hoodoo and everything, to Christianity. But remember, Nick, that's all for a Yod in a blaze of glory, not the letter G. Now, and John Cockburn makes a similar complaint, though he goes big for gamma as opposed to the Yod. And he's in, to give you an idea of the reach of Masonry, he's writing in Adelaide. Shout out to Fiona. He's writing in 1897, and he insists that the Greek capital gamma, your set square, Nick, should be used instead of G, not the Yod. And this is where I got exciting to me, was he introduces the Gammadian cross, which he calls, I love this, he calls it the tetragrammaton. Now that's just going to freak people out, because the four letters in Hebrew that are never spoken are the tetragrammaton, Nick. But because if you take the four gammas, the Gammadian cross, he calls that the tetragrammaton, not grammaton. No possible confusion there, folks, right?
No.
Anyway,
no.
Gammadian is a lot easier to remember, right? And the Gammadian cross is what we know, Nick, as...
That's the swastika.
That's a swastika. Now, he's writing in 1897, so he doesn't blush at all and saying, hey, we should have a swastika up here instead of a G, But really, until the German National Socialists, Nick? That's right, socialists. Until really the fascists pervert the Hindu swastika into the Hakenkreuz, their symbol of Aryan superiority. The swastika is used everywhere. It's in floor masonry. It's in people's clothing. My favorite thing is seeing all the sports teams that wore it as their big marker, big swastikas. Well,
I mean, anyone who's been into a Buddhist temple, it's one of their key symbols, which sadly now they can't use on as logos on clothing or anything. But you walk into a Buddhist temple, as I've done many times in Tokyo. It is a key symbol for them of peace and harmony, no less.
Yeah, this is something that's that was exciting to me, because I knew that Rene Guénon, who again wrote this thing in the 20s called the Letter G and the swastika. I knew that in his book, not that one. Here it is. It's much abused because it's one of the few books that I've carried with me for 40 or 50 years, called The Symbolism of the Cross. And in there, there's a chapter. Chapter 10 is the swastika and the cross, in which he explains that the swastika is essentially the cross in motion and is really best understood, and perennialists that know Guénon better than I do will probably gag at this, but it's really understood if you're looking at the cross, not face first, but from above. The swastika is the horizontal arm of the cross in motion. It's the plane of existence, and it's the polarity consequent to the transcendent meeting the immanent in the world. That all the world is an iconographic image of the transcendent and immanent God. More than you wanted to know, but the swastika has this, it's universal usage. You find it in ancient Christian tombs and mosaics as well, Nick, as well as the Buddhist thing, and certainly the Hindus use it. So it's I mean, the Buddhists get it from the Hindus. This is the Native Americans had symbols of the swastika.
Yeah.
And the perennialists say it gives you the depth of the meaning of the cross, which is, of course, even a more universal symbol than the swastika. The Blessed Augustine is supposed to have said, Christ hung on the cross because of that meaning. It was a historical Roman means of torture and murder, but it also has this meaning, that Christ dies on the cross because that's who Christ is. He is the meeting of the transcendent and the immanent, and our means to eternal life, because he is that conjunction. More than you need to know there, but I mean, no, that's actually really important. Yeah. But that. And so Guénon, when he writes about the letter G, this is where he goes immediately. He says whether you go with the yod or the capital gamma, that with the catechism thing saying the 4 letters is that there are 4 yod crosses, which are swastikas, and the 4 yod cross looks different. There's enough difference between the yod cross and the swastika that we've learned to kind of shudder at, that you don't see it as such. It has a different name. But the 4 gamma cross, Nick, the Gammadian cross, there's no way you don't see that and say, whoa, boy, that's a swastika. To Guénon, that gamma, even though it's not a yod, or that G, even though it's not a yod or a gamma, brings you to the swastika, and the power of the symbolism is the symbolism of the cross. And because Rowling intentionally makes, at her first mention of the G, she brings you via Murphy to the hallmark, which is the Salem cross. She embeds that in the story.
Okay.
Now, that's and essentially what we get with the Salem cross and Freemason Hall, and on Tyler Powell's back in the Ramsey Silver Vault basement, is we get G as a symbol of Christ. Now, and Guénon says all sorts of fascinating things about the keystone, which, Nick, you're an engineer. The keystone is something the Masons are really big on. That's another one of their key symbols, because the keystone is the only way really before rebar for you to have an arch hold the stones
Yes.
in place.
And if you've looked around a medieval church, and even more so a medieval cathedral, although you see these great towering vertical structures, when you look at how they're constructed by buttresses and flying buttresses, they are all arches, all capped with keystones. It's key engineering for medieval masons.
And it's decorated as essential because of specific passages in Scripture. And Scripture talks a lot about cornerstones, Nick, which also are, important in terms of masonry.
Yeah.
But and this is something I found out just researching this for this article, that because of another passage where Christ talks about a stone falling and crushing you to powder, that there's a certain school of thought that says that the Greek word for cornerstone is actually the word they also used for keystone. That that cornerstone and keystone are the same things, and cornerstone is from the Psalms through the Gospels is accepted as a pointer to Christ himself. If we say that that's I don't want to say synonymous, but assonant with keystone, now we've got something that really ties us into masonry in a very strong way. All right, that's where I think all of that came to, was that the G is meant to take us to the cross, which takes us to Christ. And specifically, Tyler Powell as a Christ figure inside the book. His sacrificial love for Jolanda, is, she has several names, Nick, right?
Oh, yeah.
But he basically has this he's fallen in love with a woman who has been raped repeatedly by her mother's murderer and kept a prisoner and trafficked, and is now pregnant. And he's decided to do everything possible to free her and have a future with her, which is heroic on all sorts of levels, right, Nick? I mean, this Tyler Powell. Basically, the G brings us to Tyler Powell and his meaning inside the books, and for that, I urge readers to go to my post on the first one on cryptonyms, where Tyler is, as you'd expect from a guy's name means, the guy who lays tiles, has a Masonic. He has a Masonic role, and in like the 12 positions that are in every lodge, the Tyler is the man at the gate that keeps the non-Masons out, and he's the protector and the guardian, which is nice for what Tyler does in terms of his. I think we can call her his fiance, right? His beloved. And Powell is a Welsh word that largely means royalty.
Yes.
That Tyler Powell is, the King Mason. Who would the King Mason be if G is the sign for God, right? I mean, that he's offering himself up as a sacrifice, and he is crucified. He is destroyed by the world. He is brutally murdered so that all of his identity is taken from him. He is only what could be known to God as he's left in that basement, right? No eyes, no ears, no teeth, no penis, no hands, no feet. He's just a corpse with a cross, a 3-barred cross emblazoned in his back. Oh, it's a horrific murder, but it's a ritual sacrifice that only somebody, with incredible, I mean, it's a psychopath, right? I mean, it's beyond twisted.
Yeah.
That person is, I think, what we get with the G, because we're told in the beginning that a G was emblazoned on his back. We get that association right from the start in Rowling symbolism. So now we get, so what? So what? It's a cross, it's Christ. What do you make of that? Now, to me, this is important. I mean, I got 3 so whats on this. What does that mean with Rowling's work? What is, are we going to see this? Is this going to bleed into the next two books? And what does that why does that Salem cross take such a big place in this? Why that cross of all crosses? And then really the conclusion is, does it work, Nick? I mean, if you can read the Kamara Swamy stuff via Ray Livingston, a literary critic's job is to figure out the intention of the author, via the artistry of the work, and then to make a judgment. Does the intention match the result? And if yes, then celebrate it. If no, then say, doggone it, you missed, honey. That was a great stretch, but it didn't work. But anyway, to me, and I hope to readers, is that the G is, as God in geometry, is a symbolic representation of mystery, other, and self-transcendence. That Rowling is giving the work what Vera Nabokov said her husband's work was saturated in, which is this big, long Russian word, potostorinost, which is really spirituality. But it's nothing that's in your face. It's just this coloration, right? Of things, everything from ghosts to alchemy to there's a liminal experience of life and death always in Nabokov's work, and that she's giving us that entry point with that letter G being repeated again and again and again, especially as it ties to the cross and Tyler Powell's death. That's the big takeaway for me, is that the G standing for God, the Gao Tu, and that G painted on the door points us to Strike and Robin's vocations. Now, I said earlier that, Robin as witness G is she's a preemie, Nick. She's born early into her vocation. At age 19, by force of this agony, she becomes an avenger. She's the only person who recognizes those spots on the rapist's ear, and she's really, witness G is the reason that the rapist murderer is convicted. And that, even though Robin is psychologically crushed by the entire experience, it confirms, in a way, her vocation as Artemis, that she's going to be a protector of women and children, that she's not going to be focused on conventional things. And as much as she is focused on relationships that will end in marriage and children or a conventional job, she's going to be fighting this interior vocation, this word within her that's calling her to do something extraordinary, to be this avenger. And all through the books, we see what happens to her when she fights this stuff, and the inherent conflict of a woman, especially having this vocation, is that there's violence. Hallmarked Man
frequently.
By the end of Hallmarked Man, if you're not shaking your head when she goes through the litanies of things that she's endured, the amount of scars that she has, interior and visible, you're not really paying attention.
Everyone should remember that the next time they give Linda a hard time.
Yeah. Especially as I think Linda's going to die in the next book, right, Nick? Didn't you say that?
Well, now you always say you don't play those games. You don't play the sweepstakes.
Anyway, but look for Linda to die and sleep tight. All right. Anyway, that's a lake point, isn't it, Nick? That's a lake point because of Rowling's regrets about her mother. All right. so we get Robin, experiencing the conflict between her interior life and her vocation as a detective, as an avenger, and the conventional life. And it's that there's an agony in that. The thing with Matthew was a disaster. The thing with Murphy is building up to be another disaster. She thought maybe dating a policeman would work, right? Kind of marrying those two ideas, right? No, that's not going to work either. She can't follow a conventional path. Strike, in this book especially, Strike has, as a man, as a soldier, his being an avenger, Nick, and an investigator who reveals the truth and protects people and saves them from abuse and violence, that was a more natural thing for him to do. And while it meant that he couldn't have a conventional relationship with Milady Berserko, he's happy to have, sadly, conventional and commonplace casual sex relationships with women because it's not that important to him. He has his vocation, and he'll just do token gestures to his life as a man, as a normal human being. Now he's thrown that off, and he thinks it's because he's in love with Robin, and he wants a conventional relationship with Robin. And so what does he do, Nick? He chooses a path where he is not the man that he is by vocation. He's not a proper detective. He's only taken this case to win Robin's affection. How does that work out for him?
Oh, predictably, awfully.
That's right. I mean, he winds up being, bitten by the dog. We get the Snape scene. He's bitten by the dog. He's cared for by Robin. He goes to Sark. At that point, he realizes, I can't do this. I can't pursue Robin. She shared with me this terrible tragedy about, the ectopic pregnancy and how she's effectively infertile. I can't press my case here, even though this is the moment I want to say, I love you, let's have that relationship. Instead, he embraces her vocation, and he practices his own vocation. And really from that moment forward, it's really the turn of the story. He pretty much abandons his pursuit of Robin as such and goes forward in terms of solving the crime. He goes back to who he is. And where does that lead him, Nick?
to half an ear at one point.
That's right. It leads him to a fate which is almost identical to Tyler Powell's. And really you feel the influence of Tyler. He says at one point that he's almost channeling Tyler Powell in the house at Iron Bridge, where he goes into the basement. He's attacked by the same man with a knife that murdered Tyler Powell, who tries to take his ear off. It's not a Van Gogh moment. It's definitely more a stigmata of Tyler Powell moment. And he stands upright, which has all sorts of meaning, and collapses after giving everything he has to making sure that the case will be made against these sex traffickers, rapists, and murderers. And he saves the girl. He saves
and becomes a proper man.
That's right. That's right. That proper man, meaning, as this upright man, he becomes a symbol of Christ. He becomes this human being who has transcended his accidental, egotistic, driven self and become his vocation, sacrificially and in love for others. And it's a magnificent ending. And that ending is what enables him finally to come to Robin and say, here I stand. You can't go with him because he's not in your vocation. I am that to you. The Psychomachian allegory finally is resolved, really, and soul and spirit meet at the bottom of those stairs. Sadly, Robin is broken by all of this, because now she doesn't want to do to Murphy what RFM, what Matt had done to her.
Yeah.
And so we're left in the agony at the end of Hallmarked Man, but it's a very promising finish. And the symbolism of the G, Nick, and the idea of the vocation and sacrifice and all that stuff, I think the symbolism of G brings us there. Now, you can accept that or not. I'm gonna two things quickly before we get to whether whether I think it worked or not. Though obviously I think I think it did work. that is are we going to see all this masonry again? Yes, it's a possible thing, Nick, because we've been arguing that book 8 is a setup for 9 and 10. So unlike all the other books where you're not going to see the I Ching again, you're not going to see this, maybe the masonry thing is going to carry through because it's very convenient. It has a lot of symbolism in it. It's a fraternal organization. It has it's convenient, and we've put a lot of work into it in this book. So maybe we're going to see it in 9 and 10.
And we didn't really get a lot of payoff from it either, did we, in terms of plot?
No. So, I can say it's possible.
Yeah.
But what's your gut feeling, Nick? Do you think we're going to see it again?
The trouble is, after, the first 7, where you're conditioned into, today we're looking at white horses, and today we're looking at the crosses of St. John, and we're not expecting to see them again. I'm conditioned into, so this is the masonry book. But I suspect you could be right, because there was a lot of build-up of masonry and who the Masons are and the different lodges that various policemen go to. And we never really got anything to pay off.
Okay, so you're saying you think it can bleed into the next 2 books. I guess I'm still on the nah. We're gonna get something different. I considering the collection of books that I have on my shelf, I'd be delighted if we went forward with it, but I'm skeptical. I want to talk though about something that just struck me as wild when reflecting on the Salem Cross, Nick. And I think Ed Shardlow actually put me onto this in one of our discussions of the ring composition of each part. I think in one of them, which was a 7 or a 9 part thing, Ed said, it's a Salem Cross. In that if you draw, the ring.
Yeah, and you could see it, and it worked out perfectly.
You have the thing, and you have the top bar, and then the middle bar, and the bottom bar, and a latch. Wow, that's a Salem Cross right there. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, that's great. That's so good, because we have that Salem Cross really graphically imprinted on your imaginative retina, right? I mean, this is just like, oh wow, they carved that into his back and they cut off everything else, to have that be the subliminal. Why do I keep saying subliminal? What I know. Gosh, that's terrible. Anyway, we know that's the subliminal structure or symbolism of the book. Wouldn't that be great if it paralleled with this clear symbolism of the story? That was great. That Rowling gave you that reveal. But then I thought, Nick, I know I promised not to go here. I shouldn't have said anything about Linda dying in the next book. But here I want to jump into the what is the shape of the series? And I'm going to suggest, Nick, that the shape of the series is the Deathly Hallows symbol. Now, that strikes me as being such a obvious thing in a way that probably somebody has already said this, but I think what happens in book 8 gives us why that would work. So if you draw a Salem cross, Nick, and you have books 1 and 7, and then 2 and 6, and then 3 and 5 as the 3 bars coming across, you basically have the bottom of the cross being a 0, and then you have 4 at the top. So you've got a 3-barred cross right there. And that's the ring of the first 7 books, is that Salem cross. Where would you put 8, 9, and 10 on that symbol? Well, I think 8, 9, and 10 are going to be the bisecting line coming through the center of that circle. All right? Because 8 right now, we know it parallels almost every book in the series. But the strongest echoes, Nick, are with the crosses in Troubled Blood and almost everything in
Career of Evil.
Career of Evil. You know, all the multiple suspects, the traveling around the UK, the violence against women, the violence. Did I say violence against women, Nick? I mean, that 3 and 5 are the books most closely in parallel with 8. And so if you draw that circle and then put 8, and then you assume that the next books are going to be, 9 will be 2 and 6, and 10 will be 1 and 7.
Wow.
That then we get a bisecting line coming through that ring, that circle, and that cross. And because 1 and 7 connect to 4, and those two have been separated from the base, they're not a latch as such, we get a triangle in the middle of it, Nick. Now, I know, that means that the circle includes the triangle instead of the triangle including the circle. But boy, Nick, we're really close to a Deathly Hallows symbol with a circle, a triangle, and a bisecting line. Just saying. That's sorry. I really don't.
My head spins with all these diagrams. I'm still trying to work out Louise Freeman's double wedding band theory.
Yeah, that's the reason I guess maybe I'm just contrarian, right? Because Louise is invested. Louise is the best at this. There's nobody really in her league, right? Nick, is anybody else even trying to do this like Louise is doing it?
Well, we've got the tetra.
The tetractys. That's right. And the tetractys, believe it or not, is mentioned multiple times in the Masons talking about the tetragrammaton or the tetragrammaton. That the G stands for, the gamma stands for geometry, but the yod is the 10th letter, and the intersection of those things is the 10-shaped thing. That the Pythagoreans worship the tetractys as the divinity, hence the G for God. Okay, so the tetractys is mentioned. I thought, oh wow, Evan, and seriously, the tetractys is, to me, the default shape of the series. We don't know yet whether the next one's going to be casual. You, of course, have casual vacancy as the top of the thing. I'm really hoping it's Christmas Pig, but gosh, we really should start a separate website for casual vacancy. You've got so many people out there, Nick. Every casual vacancy fan in the world has come to us. God.
Vacancy Anonymous. I'm putting adverts out there, John. I'm putting adverts out there.
All right, so that crazy possibility. Dr. Kumaraswamy, I'm going to throw it to you, Nick. Do you think that this G symbolism, does it work like the eyes of Deathly Hallows? Does it work like the symbols of Christ at Harry's resurrection? Does it work like the crosses in Troubled Blood work, which I think really worked? Does the G have that kind of force inside this book?
So the way it works for me as the poster boy for the unconscious reader. So reading this the first time through. It certainly, that doubt and the duality between the witness G and the Masonic G certainly ramped up the confusion and tension for me with the G daubed onto the door. In terms of, oh wow, there's another G. Where are all these G's coming from? I didn't get that to the same extent that I got with the Maltese crosses or with the white horses. But again, we're all fairly convinced this next set of 3 is going to be different. And I've just argued that I can see Freemasonry bleeding across. What if G is going to be a recurring symbol across more than one book? Then I think, interesting as it was within Hallmarked Man, maybe it will achieve the same kind of power that we got with the Maltese crosses and we got with the white horses.
I think it worked, but not at the level of her other successes with coloration. It's more the level of things like alchemy, where it's so subtle. I mean, and again, this is our celebration of Louise's work. I mean, Louise has really done the good work on alchemy and Hallmarked Man, and said that, look, it's an albedo, but there's a ton of Negretto elements in it. That really magisterial work and identifying all the things and tracking it through a very difficult book. Did it give you a satisfying result? An albedo with a Negretto background, which I think I think Louise is right. But does that give you a satisfying alchemical experience the way you did in her other books? It's confusing.
Yeah.
And gives you that mixed experience. And that's ultimately, we've been talking about this since the book came out last year, Nick. When you read Hallmarked Man the first time, I think Rowling's intention with things like the letter G is to provide kind of this extra dimension of spirituality and otherworldliness and unknowable things that are in the air. That, again, that protostoronost idea. But you're left just with that as in the air. You don't get a really solid, satisfying finish to it, largely because Robin doesn't accept his engagement, his proposal. That Rowling's intention as an artist using these subliminal tools gave us a non-definitive ending. And I think that was actually Rowling's larger intention, is that this book is meant to be absolutely crushing and disturbing to any serious striker. It's so unlike all the other books. We don't really get this really very satisfying resolve. The resolution, the big reveal, all those things. Yeah, we've got Ian Griffin's in jail. That's great. Tyler Powell and Yolanda, they're still dead. There's so many bodies thrown around here. But that Rowling's intention, I think, if she's going to be judged on her intention versus result, we have to say that her primary intention was not to deliver the spiritual backdrop and the spiritual messaging that she's done in other books. Instead, we get that messaging. It's implicit. It's fairly strong if you know what to look for. But the larger intention is to bury the reader and make them just almost despair of understanding what that book was about because of all the new characters, all the various plots. You don't get it. So I give her an A+ for confusion and sort of chaos theory in her fandom. and I give her maybe a B- on the spirituality thing and that.
I'm
it's
gonna reserve my grades. This book in
oh,
particular.
leaving me out here. This is great.
I'm gonna reserve my grades because if this is, as we suspect it is, the Keystone, John, bridging the first 7 and the final 2, you can't judge that until we know the pressures exerted against it by 1 to 7. We don't know what pressure is going to be exerted against it from 9 and 10. It's a hanging piece of masonry at the moment. We don't know what that's going to support.
As always, Nick, you're much more sober judgment, and I should have studied engineering, Nick. Should have studied engineering. I just swing back to close up with this stuff. Where this has been an exercise in coloration, in looking at subliminal effects, trying to figure out what Rowling is working with and how she uses it, what the ends of that are. I don't think any of us really thought the symbolism of the letter G was that's so important to the book. We didn't get to the swastika or the yod or the gamma and the cross oh well. That definitely was subliminal and had a muted effect. It wasn't repeated enough. Though I did like the way that, as you said, that she brought it into Robin's ectopic pregnancy. She brought it into the murder mystery via the Masons and the Freemasons and the Boris Johnson character being such crazy, and she brought it into Strike and Robin's relationship via the Exodus moment of the red G being painted on the door and how that played out in their relationship. It really hit on a lot of things, just like the cross and the crosses in Troubled Blood hits you on multiple levels. But especially in the really subliminal thing of Strike as Red Cross Knight, where she retells the first book of the Fairy Queen inside Troubled Blood. I mean, this is magisterial artistry. This book, I don't think she could have done that and still given us a story that was so disturbing and not being, it didn't have all the satisfactions that we expected from a Strike novel.
No. But we know just because of the investigations that we've done in terms of her epigraph choices, we know that at least as much artistry has gone into this book. I mean, you look at the ring and the book perfectly mirroring the Tyler Powell storyline. This is you said magisterial before. I think this is maybe not to the same level as the work that she's put into the Fairy Queen. But then again, she didn't rely solely on the ring in the book, and we're just now scraping the surface of the other works that she's epigraphically chosen for this book. There's a lot of work that's gone into a book designed to create confusion in the reader, and maybe it is only a billionaire could afford to do that. If ordinary super talented writers could afford to write a book that most of her casual readers would finish going, huh? Yeah. They couldn't do it. Their editors wouldn't let them do it. Their publishers would be up in arms demanding drastic rewrites. Rowling's done this for a reason. And at the moment, we don't know why, but for sure there's a reason.
Yeah, seriously, when we look back at this, I remember the couple of years between Half-Blood Prince and Deathly Hallows, and we were speculating like mad, Nick. It was all hands on deck. It was a crazy time for speculation as how this series was going to end. Was Snake a good guy, a bad guy? I mean, it was every question you could possibly imagine, and a lot of them were bullseyes. I mean, there's a lot of serious strikers, and I think the best of them are here at our site. But that doesn't compare to the tens of millions of people between Half-Blood Prince and Deathly Hallows trying to figure out what was going on and rereading all the books and trying to see, and none of whom got the series structure or the books themselves as being rings. That was 3 years later. That time period, that the interlibrum, whatever that, or interlibros, that time period is what we're in now, and it'll be forgotten. I mean, right now people talk about the relationship of Half-Blood Prince and Deathly Hallows. I think Rowling said after Deathly Hallows came out that she saw them really as just a continuous feed. 6 to 7 was just like one long book. That is probably, I think, is how we're going to see 8, 9, and 10.
Wow.
Let's see. All right. Whew.
So
sorry for the long interval, folks. We're gonna be much more active now. At the end of the summer. Now we got this film studio set up. Woo. We'll start making the classes. We hope to have sooner than later. I shouldn't say that. It may not be until the new year, because we got a big thing planned. But Nick and I are working on 3 classes where Nick is going to talk about the lake, I want to talk about the shed, and then the two of us will talk about the golden threads. Just to give you, maybe we'll do this, Nick, before the TV show comes out, so that everybody can have really a good grasp of what Rowling as a writer is about. We'll see. That's the goal. That's the goal. And I hope if you enjoyed this adventure in coloration.
Yeah, if you have any questions for me or my young colleague, Dr. John Granger, do let us know in the comments.
His twin brother, yeah. I was afraid. This is 2 weeks old now, Nick. This is. I was afraid of getting a bad sunburn. This going out. Survived. All right. Thank you all for your patience, and
thank you.
God willing, we'll be back again soon.
Take care.